Estrangement is such an ugly beast. It leaves a profound impact on everyone touched by it, not just by the few people directly involved in it, but it forever changes individuals, families, and all the relationships associated with it, and it leaves a wake of destruction everywhere it goes. If you're watching this, I'm sure you're here because you've experienced it too. So I want to put a question out there today. What is the hardest or maybe the saddest part of estrangement for you? Let's open up a discussion about this. Leave your answer down below in the comments. I'll share mine in a minute, but let's give a voice to this stuff. So many feel like they're so alone in this and so isolated. I promise you are not. If there's something specific that hurts, let's talk about it. Or does it just hurt all over and you can't really nail down just one thing because it all hurts? I promise it doesn't matter which side of this stuff you're on. It hurts like a bear on all sides. So let's talk about it. For me, the hardest and the saddest part of all of this is the impact of trauma and how deeply and utterly shattering it is, especially if it remains unhealed. It steals everything and it leaves scars that run deep and last for life. It steals connection. It steals agency. It steals accountability. It steals joy. And it leaves gaping attachment wounds in its place. In my experience, and I've had a lot of it, unhealed trauma is by far the biggest and most painful driver of estrangement and toxic interactions, with the worst offenders being unhealed early childhood trauma and unhealed generational trauma. I'm not saying that to blame anyone for anything. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. It happens in all kinds of situations for all kinds of reasons, and it looks like all kinds of things. But unhealed trauma spans every social, economic, and religious circle. It happens to men, it happens to women. It's insidious and it hides everywhere and manifests itself in all kinds of ways, including often with a smile. And yet, all of them are devastating and they shatter people and they shatter families. I've lived this on all sides as a mom, as a daughter, and a daughter-in-law, and unhealed trauma is behind all of it. When trauma remains unhealed, it spills out everywhere. Sometimes that looks like depression. Sometimes it looks like denial. Sometimes it looks like the Energizer Bunny who can't quit, or that the only way of dealing through life is to tiptoe through the tulips. And then there's other times where it comes out like a fire-breathing dragon. Sometimes it's a mix of all of the above. I guess you could say what precipitated this particular video is that I had a pretty painful run-in with it just this week. Suffice it to say, estrangement and holidays or any event where family and connection are involved just don't really get along. I've been on and off estranged with my son for most of the year. Thankfully, it's been more on than off, but it's still been a little shaky. Well, we had a really super neat and unexpected thing happen with one of our other kids that has created a pretty significant family event that will be happening soon. Since we've been more on than off with this particular kid, we decided to invite him and his girlfriend to attend. Oh boy, was that ever the wrong move. We met the dragon really fast, and that dragon burned everything down in a hurry, to the point that we had to say, "We love you, but no more until you deal with your anger issues." And that's to protect ourselves. But that's also really what tripped the sadness, because this said kid joined our family via adoption and came to us with a severe trauma history that we didn't know about. It resulted in reactive attachment disorder and a lifetime of complex PTSD. It happens when really young kids either get inconsistent or no care from their primary caregivers very early in their life. That might sound like a trite thing, but it's not. They don't get over it. They don't outgrow it. It doesn't go away when they become adults, but it bleeds into every aspect of their life, and it has a massive impact on cognitive, social, and emotional development. When I was in high school, we had several pine trees in front of our school. They were big, beautiful trees, probably 50 feet tall. They'd been there forever until we had a crazy wind and snowstorm. And I remember coming to school one day and one of those trees right next to the sidewalk had blown over in the storm. And you couldn't help but notice why. That big, beautiful, towering tree didn't actually have very many roots. They were all short, they were all shallow, and it didn't really have any foundation to be able to withstand that kind of a storm. Unfortunately, early childhood trauma had the same effect on my kids as it does on many others. It destroyed their ability to form deep connections with anyone. It's not a childhood problem, it's not a parenting problem, it's a trauma problem that left scars for them for life. And when we met the dragon this time around, I could so clearly see that my kid, who is not a child at all anymore, but very much an adult, who is capable of making different choices, was just like that tree in front of our high school that blew down. Despite all that we did and how hard we tried and how hard we fought to get help, the emotional and relationship roots that should have formed early in his life never had a chance to develop. And all that fire he was breathing at us was actually all the trauma he's been through but has never dealt with, and it was being vomited all over us. I'm not talking about stuff from today. I'm talking about stuff from decades ago. Stuff that happened long before he was adopted. It's still there. It's still running the show. And it is still sending a wrecking ball through his life and through our family. So no, I am not a fan of trauma. And it is, by far, the saddest thing about estrangement. Because I know it's not fixable, at least by me. Only my own trauma is. And I also know that the relationships with those on all sides of this can only ever be repaired if they're willing to deal with theirs. I've seen the same scenario play out in so many different situations with my own mom, with my mother-in-law, with the women I work with all the things that I've seen them go through. A lot of them didn't even know they were dealing with trauma because it had all been so normalized, but that's what it is nonetheless. With the holidays now approaching, they do have a way of bringing this stuff out in full force because the holidays are a time that are all about connection and family and love and relationships. And they can bring out the best in people, or they can definitely bring out the worst. I also know that if that type of a situation happened to me, it's probably happened to some of you as well. So I wanted to offer some kind of way to help people get through it because it is sure not fun to deal with. Once again, let's talk about this stuff. Let's open up a conversation, leave a comment, and share what your hardest thing is about this stuff. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want, check out that video right up there to learn some more.